Phillip. So in this video, we're going to talk about Sabrina Imbler's short story collection, Dyke Geology. Now, I really like the idea of this collection, because basically what Imbler does is links geographic phenomena, especially related to volcanoes, with interpersonal experiences, particularly same-sex desire or same-sex relationships, but also questions about interracial romantic relationships, questions about the silencing of women and the anger that women often experience at that silencing. So we have this thematic linking between geological phenomenon, particularly interesting given the sort of long scope of time that we have to work with in thinking about geology, and the speaker of these poems' experience. So I want to read you a couple of bits that I think are sort of interesting and or representative of the entire collection. So there's seven numbered stories. I'm actually, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the structure of these. There's 7 numbered stories, each of which consists of block paragraphs. For some reason, I don't know, I find this very difficult to actually read, even though I really like the idea behind the collection. But because they're fairly long with block paragraphs, I'm not going to read you the whole things, I'm just going to read you a few bits and pieces of them. So, from number 1. It all happened that one summer 780,000 years ago. The June when humans first learned how to make fire, the July when the first woman left Africa, and the August we think we built the Sphinx. That summer a volcano named Kohala saw the poles switch from north to south and south to north. They sat for so long on opposite ends of the earth and then decided suddenly and arbitrarily to change places, walking halfway across the world. Kohala would learn that Earth has always alternated between these periods of normal polarity and reverse polarity, where the magnetic field flips into the opposite orientation, where difference no longer attracts, and suddenly the volcano realized she hungered for the same. The traditional theory of attraction in the field of electromagnetism operates under the assumption of 2 poles. Each pole radiates a sunburst of what scientists call field lines, whose violet presence in the sky we call an aurora. This theory claims unlike poles attract because their field lines come together like vines or tendrils, or the matching of fingers that happens when 2 hands meet. This theory also claims like poles repel because their field lines run parallel to each other, always in sight but never touching. The traditional notion of attraction, however, assumes touching to be necessary for love. What I find more erotic is the suspension of contact between 2 like people who insist upon loving each other despite the fact that they may never touch. Loving each other because seeing is sometimes enough. So that's the first 3 paragraphs, and it gives you this great sense of the geological or scientific premises that undergird and sort of shape the reflections on interpersonal relationships. This question of the polar shifts, the North and South Pole shifting their sort of electromagnetic polarities, or whatever, I don't know science, or whatever it is. This idea of electromagnetism being run on the contrasts between like and unlike currents, or positive and negative currents, or whatever it is, and the notion that they interact in specific ways. This comes to reflect in the case of same-sex desire, heterosexual versus homosexual desire. The notion that attraction is between opposites has a degree probably of truth for electromagnetism, but it doesn't necessarily have that same degree of truth for human beings. And so we have that comparison and that contrast, because it's not just that question of these are the principles of electromagnetism. It's also Kohala saw the poles switch. The volcano here becomes sort of personified in this last line of the first paragraph. And suddenly the volcano realized she hungered for the same. This notion that the volcano can in some way reflect the speaker almost, or reflect the position of the LGBT person, lesbian, gay, whatever it is. That same-sex desire, the desire for the pole that is similar to your own, the pole that is the same as your own, that's not a principle exclusive, that the principle of electromagnetism does not tell us about principle of interpersonal interaction. So I want to read you this other little bit here. This is from number 5. And this is one of the other things that I found really compelling, because again, we get this notion of volcano or geological activity, the creation and erosion of mountains through volcanic eruptions and things like this, linked to the question of what it means to be a person, particularly what it means to be a woman, and what it means to be a lesbian. So we get this section, and I'm probably going to pronounce the name of this volcano wrong. I've never heard it said. I don't speak Hawaiian, so I'm going to give it my best shot. The volcano Loihi, which now lies 3,000 feet below sea level, will become the next Hawaiian island. Submarine photography means we know her lava hardened into goldenrod fire petals turned yellow from rust. Scientists predict Loihi will reach the surface in anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 years because yellow women are cunning and two-faced, difficult to catch and impossible to predict. Concerning the continual surveillance and monitoring of native bodies with native names under the guise of keeping the peace, it seems to me the field of modern seismology bears a profound debt to colonialism. Of the 5 Hawaiian volcanoes, only 3 remain active: Kilauea, Mauna Loa, and Hualeli. I roll these names around like salt on my tongue. In 1997, the United States Geological Survey deemed the volcano's Kohala a low-risk, the volcano Kohala a low-risk area. These geologists have no way of confirming whether she is extinct or dormant, but as you can imagine, are eager to dismiss quiet woman as a threat. So we've got, I think, 2 sort of crucial intersections here between the geological and the human. This idea, yellow women are cunning and two-faced, difficult to catch, and impossible to predict. So we here have both a feminist component, but also a racialized component, because Imbler is half Chinese. And so the sort of question of interactions with white people, dating white people, and things like this come up multiple times in the stories. But we've also got this idea at the end of that second paragraph that I read you, but as you can imagine, geologists are eager to dismiss a quiet woman as a threat. So we've got these sort of senses of silencing, senses of distrust, senses of the socio-cultural structures that dominate and delimit women's experience. Again, tied to these larger geological concepts, geological principles, in really interesting ways.